Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to HSM. Super glad that you are here tonight. It has been a great weekend already. We're very excited about our service tonight. We're starting tonight with a story. I want to introduce you to a guy. His name is Matt Reynolds. If you're a regular here, If you're a regular here, you might already know Matt because he's one of the security guards in the refinery. And a lot of people, don't like the security guards, and they see them as people who take away their privileges. And yet, I want to put Matt in front of you because he has an incredible story to share. It's a story about his quest for happiness as a kid and his quest to help other people on their journey towards finding Jesus today. We're in the finale weekend of our Happy Series. 6 weeks we've been journeying together, and I want to start it off with this story from Matt. Will you guys put your hands together for Matt Reynolds?
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the... Oh, there we go. Griff mentioned that I work here on the security team at Saddleback. Prior to that, I just finished a 29-year career with the Placentia Police Department. I had a plan that I was going to go off and retire, just live a good life and do whatever I wanted, but those were my plans. Those were not the plans that God had for me. My boss here at Saddleback, I'd worked part-time here. He kept encouraging me to come on the staff full-time as one of the supervisors, and I kept saying, nah, I don't think that's for me, and eventually a long turn of events, well, here I am. And it's been a pretty awesome ride so far. There's a difference between being successful and being significant, and I've learned that difference working here in just a short time in the past year. How I got here is a long story. I won't bore you with that, but one night when I was working, I met a kid down here in the skate park who needed someone to talk to. And I spent about 2 hours with that kid, and he ended up telling me about a drug problem he had and that he really wanted to change his life and make some changes in his life and how he was living. And we had a long talk about how to get off drugs, and also we had a long talk about getting a relationship with Jesus and how that can change your life. And after a little while, he agreed to go to Celebrate Recovery, and I'm glad to say he's still in the program and still making some changes with his life. But after that night, I left with just such an incredible feeling that I was able to help somebody. In my career in law enforcement, I've gotten to help a lot of people, and I felt like I made a difference in people's lives, but not the kind of difference that I've been able to make here at Saddleback. And it really kind of made me rethink my priorities. The reason I was able to talk to that kid about drugs and the dangers of drugs, if he didn't change his direction, was I know very well that story because that was my story when I was growing up. My summer of ninth grade when I grew up, prior to that my life was pretty good, although by the time I was about 13, my friends and I started messing around with alcohol and drugs, and it slowly kept getting worse and worse and worse. And by the time I graduated ninth grade going into high school, my life took a horrible turn. What was supposed to be an amazing summer turned into a nightmare for me. The day after school got out, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And about 2 months later, she died. And then just a couple months after that, my dad passed away. So now suddenly, I'm all alone in the world. I have brothers and sisters that are a lot older than me, but because I'd messed up my life so bad, they didn't really want to take me into their house, into their families. And at one point, I overheard a phone call with one of my brothers with a social worker. They were looking into putting me into foster care. My parents had a very good family friend who knew me and knew the destructive path that I was on. And one day, he would meet me for lunch occasionally and talk to me. But one day we went to a Detroit Lions game. That was actually when the Lions had a good team. They did at one time. And he started talking to me about my life and about my drug use and more importantly about my relationship with God and how if I had one, I could change it. He didn't talk to me about religion. He talked to me about a relationship and the difference that it could make. And he knew I needed a fresh start. And after a little while, he made some phone calls. I have an aunt and uncle that live in Anaheim. And next thing I knew, my life was about to get turned upside down again. I'm on an airplane. I'm coming out here. I'm leaving all my friends and family behind. I mentioned to you guys that I grew up in Detroit, and I grew up with 4 very close friends. I had 2 sets of brothers lived on either side of me, Mike and Paul and Craig and Timmy, and the 5 of us were very close. We were thick as thieves, and I literally mean thieves, by the way. My mom always referred to us as the 5 Musketeers. And about a year after I moved out to California, my friend Paul died of a drug overdose. Suddenly 5 of us was now 4. And eight months later, my friend Timmy died while he was high on cocaine. He tried running across a freeway to get to his dealer's house and was run over. 5 was now 3. And 2 years later, my friend Craig was murdered. He was killed by someone because he had cocaine on him and they wanted his cocaine. He was actually beaten to death with a hammer. 5 was now 2. My friend Mike now lives in Jackson, Michigan, and he'll live in Jackson for the rest of his life because that's where the state prison is in Michigan. Mike's the one who killed Craig. He killed his best friend with a hammer for cocaine. If you don't think drugs will make you do crazy things, there's 4 kids that are examples, and we once said the same thing too about our lives. And back in '98, when I was back visiting people back in Michigan, I finally went to go see Mike in prison. I'd never been able to do it before. I just couldn't get the courage to do it. And we had a long talk. You go through about 2 hours of screening for a 25-minute visit when you go visit someone in prison. And to this day, he has no memory of killing his best friend, but he has to live with that every single day of his life. And that's one of the things he told me that he remembers. Every day he has to remember that. And as I was getting ready to leave, he looked at me and said, you know, of the 5 of us, you're the only one that made it out. You're the only one that made something of your life. Don't waste it. Wow. The whole drive back home, I kept thinking about that. And I kept thinking about what was the difference between me and them. The difference was I had someone who cared enough about me to help me start a relationship with Jesus, to get off the drugs, to change my life. And that's what made the difference between me and him. My friend that helped me on my path, his name was Dan, and I later went to go see him, and I told him about my visit with Mike, and told him I could never repay him for what he did for me, for changing my life. And he said, you don't have to pay me anything, but you can repay me by helping a kid in your same position someday. And I'm happy to say I've been able to do that several times over. That kid in the skate park that night, I immediately reflected back to the conversation I'd had with Dan. But I don't want to stop at just one. Why not keep going? And I'm happy to say I've been able to help a lot of kids so far make some big changes in their lives. Being on the security team, God constantly drops people in front of us that are hurting people, broken people that need some help. And on my day of judgment, when God says to me, hey, I dropped so-and-so in front of you, what did you do for him? I want to be able to answer that. I don't want to just look at him and say, well, you know, I walked the other way and I hope somebody else would help him. For some of you, the hole I was in, you know it very well. I know the way out of that hole, and the way out is through Jesus. I'd like to introduce you guys to someone here just real quick. My partner, Mel. Mel, could you stand up? Mel's one of my partners here on the security team, and we work with kids on a daily basis. You know, the Bible tells us that 2 are stronger than 1. And you know, by ourselves, we're able to help kids and do stuff, but together we make a pretty incredible team. If you need help, if you need to talk to someone, Mel and I are always here. We call ourselves Team M&M. So you remember us. Just ask anybody on HSM staff or the refinery staff, they can find us. Nothing you can tell us would shock us. Nothing would make us judge you. We're just here to help you and help you on your path. And I'm just glad to be here, and thanks a lot for listening to my story, guys.